All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Decrypted by Us. I'm Ifechi. I'm a junior at Brown studying computer science and applied math. And today I'm super excited to talk about how to write a technical resume, whether this be for an engineering role, product role, design role, etc. So there will definitely be some differences between sort of your best or ideal resume for different roles in tech. However, there's definitely some role agnostic best practices that, if implemented correctly, can vastly improve the number of first round screens you get through. So we're going to format this video in the way you typically write a resume, which is from top to bottom. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. All right, okay, let's go ahead and start with the header. So I'm just using this Jane Smith resume as an example. So starting with the header, the choice of formatting is up to you, whether your name is going to be bigger or smaller. So here, clearly Jane is a lot larger, but it's not in the center. For me, mine's actually smaller and also to the left, but it's up to you. But what you definitely want to do is put your coding languages near the top. So here, Jane decided to put her address. I would opt to put your coding languages there. That's at least what I do. So the rationale behind this is that it makes it super quick for a recruiter to see, okay, this person knows these languages and therefore is a fit for this role, which is exactly what you want when you only have on average 6 seconds for that first screen. You just want to let them know, I can do what needs to be done in this role. So I'd put coding languages near the top. I'd also put relevant links as well. So you can see Jane has quite a bit of room beneath her name. So you could put links to your GitHub, LinkedIn, personal website, portfolio, anything that you think is relevant there. Just because most of the times resumes will be in PDF format. They can click on the links, visit your stuff. And that way you can add a little bit more detail without taking up too much room. And again, if that means removing your address, that is completely fine. So the next section for you will be your education section, as we can see Jane did here. So first, of course, you definitely want to include some of that like dimensional data. So definitely the name of your university, the location, your anticipated or actual graduation. And then you definitely want to include your GPA. I know some people are hesitant to put it down. Just put it down, or recruiters may assume the worst. So for example, Jane here has a 3.48. It's above a 3, and while some people may feel like, oh, I'm not like comfortable with my GPA being shown, it's probably better than what you think. And I would just put your GPA and be completely transparent with it. So definitely put that down. You can also include things like relevant coursework, so up to 5 to 6 courses. Just keep them, again, completely relevant, the most important things. So if you're technical, things like algorithms and data structures, software engineering, things like that. As well as awards, scholarships, and anything like that that you're proud of and that you'd like to put at the top so the recruiter knows, hey, this is what I've done, these awards have been granted. You can also include your high school if you think that's relevant. Do not have to. Some people just take it off. You're totally fine saving room for a different part of your resume. And one quick note about ordering, I know I did say to put coding languages at the top, but if that doesn't work for your format, I would say then to put your coding languages in your education section. I've seen that, or directly below it before work experience. That way it's still relatively close to the top so you can instantly see, okay, these are the languages this person knows. All right, so the next portion then is work experience, which is really going to take up the bulk of your resume. But I will say one thing, when your first screen, when you have like 6 seconds, they're not going to see all that work experience. So the most important and relevant ones should be at the top. Just as I said, programming languages at the top, education, all this very relevant, important stuff at the top. Your most important work experience should be at the top as well, because that is what your recruiter is probably going to see in that 6 seconds. Although it's really important to have each experience to be strong on its own, because let's say you do pass that first round, they like what they see, they're going to go more in depth and continually reference back to this big section. So let's go over some best practices for work experience. So definitely include some of that. Again, dimensional data. Where did you work? What was the name? Location, dates employed, things like that. Just the very basics. And then really what's the most important is the description. Okay, so in the description, here are some best practices. Always use bullet points. Some people may want to use paragraphs. I just wouldn't do that. It doesn't really incentivize you to read, especially when recruiters know, oh my goodness, I have 1,000 other applicants to look through. They just plainly do not have time for that. Use bullet points. It may be the same content, but it'll look like shorter. And always use 2 to 4. Once you get more than that, it's just a little bit too much. And once you get less than that, you'll want to consider, well, why would I have a whole item just for one bullet point? So generally 2 to 4 bullet points. What then is the most important part is how you actually write the descriptions. So what's super important is saying what you've done, and to quantify your impact. So you probably heard this method before, the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, and result. Feel free to throw away the S and the T if you don't have room. You'll come to this point where you like have a bunch of these great experiences and there's just not room for all this situation and task stuff. That can be tossed out. You really want to tell them sort of what you did and the result. So some examples here of quantifying your impact are things like, I implemented a landing page redesign, increasing sign-up conversion rate by 40%. So you tell me exactly what you did and what's the actual numerical impact of that. Or designed a dashboard displaying health and alerts, decreasing incident remediation times by 15%. So again, what you did and what was the result. I will say though, sometimes you're not always able to quantify your impact. Sometimes there's just work like that. For example, if you implemented 2 new features across 40 plus mobile pages, you can't quite quantify that impact. You don't know, like maybe that did result in increased revenue, but there's no direct way to track it because there could be a synergistic effect. There's some features that you may implement or work that you may do that does not have a direct increase. And that is okay. I would just try and use some numbers in some way. So again, developed 2 features across 40 plus mobile pages. So although you're not quantifying the actual result, you're just telling them how much work I did and describing with numbers as opposed to implemented new features. So like Jane, it's going to be best to include around like at least 3 experiences in your work experience section. And for me, when I was just first starting out, I didn't have any work experience. That's okay. You can put in personal or group projects, part-time work, volunteer work if it's relevant. Like if, let's say you volunteered as a developer at some nonprofit, things that may not be like strictly like big company internships, they're still game to go on work experience as long as they're showing, hey, I positively impacted this organization in this way. I think overall that's what recruiters want to see, because if you're able to have impacts in organizations, even if it's not a direct tech company, those skills are going to be able to transfer. So you want to have around 3. Jane did that. That's awesome. All right. So now we're at the footer. So the footer really is the most flexible. You have so much flexibility here, and it kind of depends on what you do on top. So let's go through some of the different options you have. So here, Jane put her different like organizations and achievements. That's definitely awesome. That's one really common thing. If you didn't end up putting organizations in your work experience, like if you had leadership experience, that's totally fine. You can put it in one dedicated section. You can put like other skills, like other like speaking languages, frameworks, tools, things like that. You can also include very common across tech. Sometimes projects will be put in work experience, but sometimes it's also separated out into a different section, which is personally what I do. So you can have a specific project section, and this can include school projects, because some school projects are actually very relevant and technically complex and interesting, and they give you a lot of experience, even though they're for school. That's totally fine. So you can add anywhere from 1 to 3 projects, maybe even 4 if you don't have as much work experience, to really just show the other things you're doing outside to develop that technical skill and build like real life products. Really just pick the projects that you're most interested in, you're most proud of, and you want to talk about in interviews, because typically they will ask you about those projects. So that's very common. And then the final thing, let's say you still have some space, you can add hobbies and weird interests. And I would say like add like weird interests. I think those are pretty fun. You might see on somebody's resume like baking, and while that's cute, when you have 6 seconds, you just want to do what you can to stand out. Let's say they just like brushed over the footer. They're gonna be like, oh, that person, like the underwater basket weaver who had a sweet internship at Redfin. They'll remember that. That's a little bit more memorable. So you can add some fun hobbies and interests there. All right, so now that we've gone through all the sections, let's go over some general tips. So here are like 2 like decently controversial ones. Well, controversial as controversial as resumes can get. So one is color. So I like that Jane stuck to black and white, because that will apply to any industry, especially if you're a student. Like when I came in, I thought I was going to definitely go into finance. That's definitely all black and white resumes. And as you're switching between roles, like it's nice to not have to like completely revamp your resume, which is why I would say to stick with black and white. If you want to add a little bit of color, blues and grays are okay. Generally, I would not add any bright colors unless you are looking for art roles or design roles. For format, there's some controversy here, especially in tech. again, controversy, versus single column and double column or two column. I'm a big advocate for single. That's what I do. One, again, it is more common across all industries. So when you have recruiters in tech, it's possible they definitely came from different backgrounds, like not in strictly tech companies, and the sort of the convention is single column. So they're used to reading that. They're going to read it faster. And if they're able to read your things faster, they'll be able to read more. And that way you're able to fully show like your candidacy and who you are. As well, there's clear hierarchy. You just go from top to bottom. Personally, I would stick with single column. For color and the number of columns, go with your aesthetic. Go with what is you're going to feel proud of, what works best for you. These are my recommendations, but it's not like I've never seen a good two-column resume. I definitely have. And it's not like I haven't seen resumes with color that are good. Some of them are like absolutely stunning. So definitely, that's just my advice. But go with what works for you. Some other general things, no typos, and consistent font. So Jane did a great job here. No typos, consistent font. And this one's huge, 1-page resumes. So imagine your recruiter actually, you have like thousands or hundreds, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of resumes. If you see a 2-page resume, it's most likely not going to get looked over. All right. Okay. That's how to write a technical resume. I know that was kind of a lot. This is definitely a crash course. So best of luck with recruiting or whatever you happen to be doing right now. And we hope to see you around Decrypted by Us again. All right. Bye.